Battlefield Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Ola, aka ChalkOne, alongside Peekaboo Bang, and this time we are talking about Operation Metro in the sense of Battlefield 4. Operation Metro, ever since it was introduced in Battlefield 3, has been one of those maps that people love to hate. And some people really love it, actually. But it's certainly always been one of the most controversial maps. But I know that Peekaboo has played Operation Metro extensively with her clan, the 88th, and we're hoping to give you some pointers, maybe some tips, some things that you can use even in a just a public game to sort of keep you from getting too frustrated, because it can get a little bit, you can get that feeling of, you called it a grind earlier, and I mean, I think we've all been there, whether we've been pushed back into one of the two spawns or just been in that sort of seemingly endless battle around the B flag. But what do you think? Like, I know you have some tips.
Yeah, there are quite a few things you can do on Metro to make it a little bit easier for yourself or easier on you or your squad. It's a linear map, so that is going to be one of the frustrating things just right off the bat, because you have the possibility of getting pinned, much like Operation Locker in BF4 Vanilla is. If you have, one of two sides that you can get stuck in, it can happen.
Yeah. And it's never fun. I mean,
No.
That is one thing. So you don't want to... I think the key is just trying to avoid getting there in the first place.
Right. And coming from an infantry style only play background, as far as Counter-Strike, Day of Defeat, that kind of thing, an infantry only map doesn't bother me. I enjoy it. It's how I prefer to play, but that's just me. A lot of people don't. And so, this is kind of for those people, or even the people that love to play Metro, but that just need some help along the way. So,
or those that want to get that F2000 unlocked that we talked about in the last video.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the changes they made to the map for Battlefield 4? Because they added a couple of different ways, I think, to try and address that constant battle around B, to give teams a couple more options maybe to get around it or flank.
Yeah, they did change quite a few things in Metro this time around. They added a secondary, or well, I guess a third way downstairs or upstairs, depending on which way you're coming from your spawn, either US or Russian. On the right side past office, there's a little hallway ramp that goes downstairs. There's also a back door there out into the alley that you can either flank around back into B using, or you can take it right out to that alley side door and, head up into the building that my clan, the 88th, calls X. We just use that as a general term for any building set up in that formation, so that it's easy to know, no matter what map you're on, where you are, where that person is. And so it kind of flows over into other maps as far as our tactics, being able to use that and say, even if it's in a different map, they're in X building. Oh, okay. Well, I know exactly where to look then if you call that. So, obviously knowing call points in an infantry-only map like that is kind of a big deal, but they have changed a lot of things. Also, too, in lockers, they've taken out a lot of the actual lockers and added some containers, little cylindrical, look like water boilers basically along that side. So it's a little harder to corner inside of the locker, or what you would consider the lockers area, and hide in those little areas because of there's no square cover right there.
Yeah. And I mean, they added the elevators right at B, so you can take those, you can ride those upstairs, which can be, I made the comment earlier when we played that it would be nice if they could actually stay a little bit longer at the top, because you can use that, because when you're on the US side and you're trying to push up the escalator or the stairs to capture B and you want to get into the burn, there's not a lot of room there. And we've all been there where there's 15 people pushed up against the back wall of those elevators, and eventually you end up pushing each other into the line of fire of the enemy and stuff like that. So there's definitely some options there. I know one of the things that people will say that it's like, yes, if you're playing with, a clan and you're all organized and you have call points and stuff, it's easier. But I know that even in a public game, when you have maybe one or two friends in your squad only, or even just a couple of people that are on VoIP, which, thank God, is a lot easier in Battlefield 4 now for you to communicate with random squad members, that there's ways to do that. And, like, if there's a big battle at B, you should try to push out, make the enemy fight on both sides, whether that's out to A or downstairs to C. And the added pathways do help. I don't think people have fully realized them yet, because there's been times where I've gone out there and encountered nobody.
Yeah, I think they're less guarded than the typical ways upstairs or downstairs, like back escalators or stairs or, the front side of escalators, which as far as call points go, I mean, Metro is pretty standardized as far as, where things are, what they're called. You pick it up pretty quickly, even in a pub game. But I also don't think that third way down the ramp hallway that takes you into what would be the left side tunnel if you're coming from US spawn is that helpful. Metro itself can be a bottleneck, and that is even more bottlenecky. It's very small, it's a tight space. The doorway into the actual, upstairs Metro is pretty small, so pushing out is kind of difficult. You're going to have to use some sort of smoke or flashbang or something to be able to get out, which you should anyway. That's just, that's just something good to do as far as that map goes.
Even in BF3, that's something that we used to do when sort of the back escalators were the best way to get around somebody, was just to try and smoke.
Run up there.
And if you sent 3 people through, hopefully one of them makes it, and then people spawn on them.
Yep.
You've talked in the past about splitting squads so that, one guy gets through, someone spawns on that person, leaves, creates another squad so people can spawn. But at that point, then you have to let your team know and be like, hey, join, Delta Squad. I've broken through.
Even if you have to spam chat, let people know, even if it's in VoIP or whatever, letting your squad know, hey, I'm at A. Spawn on me for A or back rage or whatever. Communication is key in a map like Metro. But we talked about VoIP or being in with your clan. There's ways you can communicate or listen to what other players are doing, especially on a map like Metro, without actually having to talk to someone to know what they're doing. If you're in lockers, say, and there's someone with an LMG bipoded on the ground at the end of lockers, and he is just spraying down the hallway, the chances are of you hearing him just constantly spray down that hallway that he doesn't have control of the corner or doesn't have control of the hallway are great, because he's just constantly spraying. Now, if it's just some noob tuber that's just, throwing bullets down an empty hallway, then, you're going to see that on your mini-map, which, again, you should be using. But if you hear that constant spray and there's a big battle at B going on, or you're fighting for lockers, the chances that he's controlling lockers is he doesn't with that spray. Right. Now, if he's just taking 3 or 5 round bursts or burst firing, and you can hear him take a break and actually, burst fire, then he probably controls the corner. He's not having any big deal with, controlling the flow of people or enemies coming through the locker. So you can focus your fight elsewhere then. But if you hear him spraying, you should probably peek over there and help him. That's just a tip from me. Listening to people that either A, aren't in your squad, you can't VoIP with, and it's, typing to someone over and over can get really annoying.
Yeah, for sure. And, this, again, maybe another topic for another time, but some of the chat messages being filled up with automated server messages can make it just hard to see things.
Yeah.
So it can be a little bit difficult. One other tip that I actually picked up on as well is, I think by default the mini-map is zoomed out to like the medium stage, and when you're in Metro, especially on a Conquest server with a lot of people, this is all Conquest talk, by the way, which I should have mentioned earlier maybe, but rush strategies on Metro are a whole nother beast all by themselves. But
yes, they are.
It's really helpful to zoom in on the mini-map because, like you just mentioned, a lot of times you will see that, there's people around the next corner or whatever, and you can be prepared for it. But when it's zoomed out to the middle setting, it all becomes a bit of a cluster. There's just arrows all over the place, and you can't really tell. So just something simple like that can make a difference, especially if you're trying to sneak around to get around the main battle and backtrack or flank around. It's always good to know, because how many times I'm sure this has happened to you, but I've broken through many times just to be killed by one lone guy that just accidentally spawned way back there, and you weren't thinking, just like, I got through guys, I made it, and that was the end of that.
The other thing is if you see that guy, that one lone guy running through A, and he hasn't noticed you, don't shoot at him. Just let him go. Let him go back down to B where everything is. Ignore him. Don't touch the A flag or the burn, and just hide out until you can get a group of people there to help you. Because once you shoot that one guy, he's going to alert everybody else that you're there. And you've
same with touching
your
the burn.
load early. Yeah, touching the burn, especially too if you're pinned at C, touching the B burn is a no-no. Like, don't do it. Just at least if you can. The best way to break through and go up is going to be any way that takes you out of the burn on B. So usually the back escalator straight up through the west door to alley and going into X is going to be one of your best plans there. The other thing is too, like we talked about, as far as if you start on the Russian side and you're coming into the metro, into B, the burn happens for the Russians a lot earlier. They have more of the burn on their side than the U.S. side does.
The circle around the flag, the capture circle, is not, like, the flag is not at the center of that circle.
No, it really isn't. And the burn goes, like I said, you touch the burn sooner coming from A than you do coming from the U.S. spawn. So if you're starting U.S., you really want to push as far into that burn as you can. Either set up a firing line at the front part of the metro, like where the ticket booths are, to push them out of the burn so that you can control B longer, or you don't have that constant tug and pull for B. Because on the U.S. side, if you're pinned back to the back of that burn, you're going to have the situation where you're stuck on stairs, that far right wall, front wall. At the top of the stairs, you're in the burn, and then as well as the elevator wall right there. That's where you're going to get stuck if you don't push and put a firing line at the front of that burn.
And that's actually one of the biggest things when you start around on that is, regardless of where you start, don't stop at A or C.
Mm-mm.
You know what? Someone can pick it up later.
Yes.
Get to B, because I don't know how many battles on that map I've seen decided in the first, couple of minutes based on how quickly somebody controls B. And that's part of the frustration, I think, for people, is when they spawn in, whether it's that their hard drive takes longer to load or something, and you spawn in and you see the enemy team already has that flag, and you're stuck, either upstairs around the corner before the ticket booth even, or downstairs at the bottom of the escalators. But any other tips that you can have for, let's say you are stuck.
Okay.
Or even if you're pinned. Now, one of the things they did in BF4 is they added water to the metro, which I find annoying.
I find that highly annoying. I think it was poorly placed as far as trying to level out that map. I don't know what they were trying to do there, because it was already a little bit more difficult coming from the U.S. side, just because you're fighting uphill, and like I said, the burn pushes farther onto the Russian side. You have less of the burn to be. And the trains, and I mean, let's face it, your soldiers are a little bit clumsy, and they were in BF3 too. I mean, you'd trip over a piece of paper in Metro, and it's like, oh, are you kidding me?
Well, when you have 32 people rushing out of a spawn, all running, people literally, I mean, in real life, people would trip all over each other, but in the game too, it does happen.
Yeah.
Someone lags out, someone stops running in the middle of it.
They added the water at the bottom. They blocked off some of the tunnels in the back. You can't get back there anymore and hide out. But I don't really know what they were trying to do with that water. It's really annoying. I find it incredibly just in the way, honestly. I wish they hadn't done that, but they did. That's okay. Whatever. Yeah. It's something we have to deal with now, so... But what we were saying, say you're pinned, and then what? Yeah,
well, let's say you're pinned, and this can happen upstairs as well if you're on the Russian side. Mm-hmm. Pretty much any time that the other team controls 2 out of the 3 flags, you end up starting to feel the battle turning. Any advice as to what do you do when you've already lost A and B, or you've already lost B and C? And you want to avoid getting pushed all the way back to your spawn, because once it gets to that, a lot of times...
It's just horrible. If you're pinned downstairs, you want to shoot out the lights on top of the tunnels. Any sort of light that you can shoot out so that it's off is going to make it more difficult for them to actually hit Q and spot you, just kind of like smoke, where you can't spot someone in smoke. The other thing is form a firing line. If you are playing with friends, we do that a lot. All right, firing line here. They're not getting past this point. And once you set up that firing line of a place where you are cornering, you are holding that spot, you are not moving, you are making it a living hell for them to get past you, then people will start to push around you, especially once you start to clear people out of that area and kill them. And
it becomes a numbers game, right? Like, if you can have 4 people occupy 8 of the enemy,
yes,
that gives everyone else an advantage on the other side of the metro or wherever that may be.
the other thing is, if you can break through and get someone through, and it can be more difficult than it sounds. I know it's easy to say break through, but use smoke to your advantage. The way they did smoke in BF4 is quite a bit different than in BF3. You can see through it a little bit more. I don't find it to be as useful as I did in BF3, but it's still useful in a indoor situation like Metro. So definitely
flares are used a lot now as well.
Flares will block someone's view. I mean, it's hard to see through those things. Really,
and also just simply, it's harder to see spotted enemies because you've got red light and the orange or whatever Doritos.
Right. So breakthrough, even if it means you die over and over and your KD is horrible for a little while, just keep pushing. And if that means that you pull most of their team to the back escalators to sit there once they figure out that you're pushing through that back escalator, then, well, most of their team's not up on stairs or watching the elevators anymore, and that gives the rest of your team a chance to push forward, assuming the rest of your team gets the idea.
Yeah, and that's sometimes too, when you mention smoke and pushing through the rear escalators, for example, even when you can't communicate with the other team verbally or even in the chat, pay attention. If somebody, especially if one person's doing it over and over, like if they smoke the escalators and they go, and then you see that they die, and 30 seconds later they do it again, just watch their timing. When they smoke that, just go with them. Like if you can get 4 people up the escalator, your chances are that much better. The other thing that can help you is silencers. Just throwing a flash, not a flash suppressor, but an actual suppressor on your gun, because you won't at least show up on the minimap if you do need to fire your weapon.
If you're breaking through or trying to break through, it's a good idea to go ahead and throw one of those on your weapon anyway, just so that if you do end up getting to a point where you can back rage, you're not showing up on the minimap, or you're not your position isn't given away. The other thing is too, when you're running up the escalators or the stairs or anywhere where you've smoked in a situation like that, throw a nade out when you go, assuming it's not a non-explosive server.
Right.
Like earlier we played in a server where explosives are banned. But if that's not the case, go ahead and toss a nade on either side when you're running up, because it's going to either do some damage to someone that's up there or kill them or whatever. It's just a good idea to toss that nade out while you're running up the stairs.
And honestly, finally, I think, unless you have any more tips, and we'd like to hear from viewers as well, I'm sure that everybody's developed their own sort of strategies for Metro or given up on it completely. And that's sort of the point I'm trying to make, is you can try to make the best of it no matter what. And I've had high scoring rounds where I was pinned in my spawn. So you just have to adapt to it and try to make the best out of it.
Absolutely. And I mean, win or lose, you want to have fun in the game that you're playing. And if you're not having fun, then there's really no point in you sticking around that particular place. And even I'm the kind of person that would rather the people I'm playing with be having fun than, not enjoying it or feel like they're being beat down the entire time. Just change maps, even change weapons, even if if all of your friends want to play Metro and, you always play Assault or whatever, hell, I don't care if you go NG in Metro and shoot some rockets down the lockers. Have fun with it.
Let us know in the comments what you think, what your opinions of Metro are, and also if you want us to cover any other maps. Like, I know you mentioned Operation Locker, which is sort of what was
Similar.
BF4's biggest controversial map after Metro. Any other maps that you guys want us to talk about, anything you want us to cover, let us know, and we will do our best to do that. Until the next video, you can follow us on Twitter at BF Podcast, and you can follow at peekaboo_bang, and hopefully you enjoyed, and you'll tune in again next time. Thanks so much for watching.